Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Ruff, Tam McManus and Alison McConnell here with us today on this Monday when finally the Scottish Premiership has indeed been decided. Rangers are the champions. Congratulations to Steven Gerrard, the staff at Rangers Football Club, for winning the title. It has been a convincing season, Roughie, and I think over the course of it, nobody can deny they were the best team in Scotland.
Yeah, it was an absolutely roller coaster season. They've beaten everybody comfortably, handsomely, and the record speaks for itself. You know, haven't been beaten in the league, and as for me, it's how many shutouts they've had, not conceding any goals, and really just strolling through games. Far, far too strong for all the other teams, and I'm putting Aberdeen and Hibs and everybody else. It usually puts some kind of challenge into Rangers and Celtic. That hasn't materialised either. No, you can't take anything away for Rangers. As players, as individuals, have been absolutely superb from start to finish.
Yeah, well, we're going to look at the key players that helped Rangers to win the title. We're also going to look at the key games. We'll hear from Steven Gerrard as well. And first and foremost, our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi sums up the weekend for Rangers.
Rangers are champions again after a decade in the wilderness, as the points gap between themselves and the now dethroned Celtic has become too much to claw back. Few people saw this coming when football returned in August after the COVID break, but Steven Gerrard has had his men so focused on the task all campaign, blocking out the noise, as he calls it. The side have been built on a solid defence. They look set to break the record for the fewest ever goals conceded in a top-flight season. This place has been a fortress. They've won every game at home all season. They haven't even lost a game all campaign. When there were bumps in the road to Hibs and Hamilton away from home, they still secured draws. Previously tough away trips such as Aberdeen and Kilmarnock just became another 3 points. And when they were knocked out of the League Cup by St Mirren, they bounced back with 6 straight wins. When the Gers eased past Celtic in mid-October, it was clear the tide was well and truly turning. Celtic's implosion allowed Rangers to create an unassailable lead towards the end of 2020, and they beat them again here at the start of January. Many felt the race was over, but Gerrard kept calm.
It's about resetting midweek once we start our work towards Aberdeen. There's 48 points to play for. No one will be getting carried away. We'll keep our feet on the ground, and the league starts now for us.
Gerrard has radically improved the team's discipline, dealt harshly but fairly with COVID rule breakers, and has even topped a Europa League group that featured Benfica. His eyes are now firmly set on the last 8. In terms of players he's brought in, Glenn Kamara and Connor Goldson have been outstanding. Veterans Stephen Davis and Alan Mcgregor have given the team's pillars of experience to build on, and James Tavernier has been sensational. He's probably going to be player of the season. Gerrard himself puts the team's glory down to their squad mentality.
I think the key thing here is always that hunger and determination to become more consistent. I think our results have proved that. We've been unstoppable up to this point.
It's been a tough and testing decade for the Ibrox faithful, but every fan will tell you it's been worth it for the feeling they have right now. Who knows how many points the final gap will be, but it doesn't matter. All it does is the fact that James Tavernier will be lifting the 55th league title here in May.
Yes, our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi summing it all up for Rangers. And Tam, we mentioned it. I mentioned it to you on Friday. There was no point in anybody talking about the implosion at Celtic because this was a Rangers side that consistently delivered. They hit the front and never looked back in their performances, both domestically and, of course, let's not forget, still in Europe.
It's been a phenomenal season for Rangers, for the supporters to watch. I think that from day one they've come in, they've been focused. I think they've learned lessons of the past. I think that in the previous season, you had Rangers players coming out when they were top of the league, and even the manager, talking about winning the league. There was no talk of that, Peter, right up until Sunday when they won it. There was no talk of winning the league. There really wasn't. They've kept their own counsel, and they've done things properly. They've played game by game. They've took 3 points every week. They've been consistent. They've piled the pressure on Celtic, and Celtic haven't been able to cope. So all credit to Rangers. I think they've been absolutely fantastic to watch this season, and they have been the best team in the league by an absolute country mile, and they thoroughly deserve to win it.
We're going to hear from Steven Gerrard after that 3-0 win against St Mirren, but obviously we're going to hear from Jim Goodwin as well, John Kennedy speaking, Mickey Mellon on the programme. We'll look at the other games from the weekend, but it's all about Rangers. We'll also discuss the trouble over the weekend with Rangers fans breaking lockdown rules. But first and foremost, I would advise you, Tam, get ready for it, because Gabriel's Team of the Week is an interesting one to look at for this one. I'm sure he gets a few pelters anyway, but I think he's exceeded all expectation on this one, coming up very shortly. But as far as Rangers are concerned, there were key players. It was a team effort, and I think Steven Gerrard was keen to emphasise it was a collective that got them over the line. But we look at 5 key players that really shone throughout the season.
The whole victorious Rangers squad have been outstanding all season in their title-winning campaign, but these 5 stood out against the rest. Mcgregor has been by far and away the best goalkeeper in the league this year and is on course to break the record for the fewest goals conceded in a top-flight season. The 39-year-old has brought experience and determination to the team, constantly demanding the utmost from his teammates, whilst also making big saves at crucial moments in the game whenever he's called upon. James Tavernier is the captain and has led by example. He is the current favourite to win the Premiership Player of the Year. He had racked up 17 goals in all competitions by December, and his set-piece delivery is so reliable and so often the difference in tight games, proving many doubters across the country wrong. Connor Goldson has played every single minute in the league and Europe since February 2019. Such is his importance to the way the Gers play. He's the leader of the outstanding backline, communicating constantly throughout matches, and who could forget his double against Celtic in October's Old Firm. Glenn Kamara is the link between the 2 boxes for Steven Gerrard's men, as he can attack, defend, dribble and pass. The midfield dynamo delivered his best ever season as a professional and is integral to all things the Gers do by dominating the midfield, and at 25 he's tipped for even bigger things. Stephen Davis is 36 years old but controls games as if he were 26. Gerrard himself selected Davis as his player of the season. He's an ever-present in the team, and his importance is exemplified by the fact he didn't start in the League Cup defeat to St Mirren or the draw at Hamilton, the 2 worst performances of the campaign.
Yeah, there's 5 of them, Alison. Starman for you?
I think for me it'd probably be between Goldson and Tavernier.
Yeah, I mean, Tavernier, I think, deserves special mention, Alison, because he was a boy that over a season ago, a lot of people were looking and asking questions. They were wondering whether he was actually going to be sold. He'd taken a fair bit of criticism, and I think he showed tremendous strength, obviously, with the backing of the manager.
Yeah, without question. I think there were all sorts. I think there was a call at one point to have him stripped of the captaincy, wasn't there? I think to have come back in the manner that he did was exemplary. I think his opening half of this season was probably where he's played his best football. I know you can point to a significant percentage of the goals that he scored this season from the penalty spot, but I think even his assists and what he's contributed, I think he's played a true captain's role, and I'm sure he'll take a bit of personal pleasure in this season just purely because of the criticism that he's received, and some of it quite personal too.
Yeah, thanks to everyone posting messages. Quite a lot of people obviously congratulating Rangers on winning the title. Although I have to say on our Facebook feed, it's the most Union Jacks I've ever witnessed being posted on the on the feed. Roughie, to be perfectly honest with you, lots of people obviously celebrating. It's Charlie and Naisy. But to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think anybody can begrudge Rangers the title success because of the way they have played over the course, as Roughie mentioned, Alison and Tam. There's been a few key games that the Rangers fans would love to have been in the stadium to enjoy, but they had to watch from any stream they could get a hold of, or indeed on their television with the live pictures. Here's the key games that we've highlighted.
Rangers have won their first league title in a decade thanks to a stunning campaign where they led from the off and never looked back. We take a look at the key games on their journey to becoming champions. In the first Old Firm of the year, Steven Gerrard's men showed complete and utter control, with Connor Goldson scoring twice. Celtic didn't muster a single shot on target at home, and the result began their collapse. They won just 2 of their next 12. Days after a humiliating League Cup exit at the hands of St Mirren, Rangers were losing 1-0 to the Steelmen with under 20 minutes left to play. They'd looked nervy all game. Was their annual collapse about about to happen. Not if Kemar Roof had anything to do about it. He bagged a brace to put Rangers in command and clear at the top heading into Christmas. The second Old Firm game was seen as the last chance saloon for the Hoops, but despite their dominance, they could not find a way past Rangers' solid backline. An own goal from a second-half corner made the difference, and no one doubted the title was going their way after the match. Just 1 week later, the Gers won at Pittodrie for the second time of the season, and Alfredo Morelos' double secured all 3 points. The result put them 22 points clear at the top, and despite Celtic's 3 games in hand, they were not able to make any inroads, with the margin between the teams just too big, leaving the Gers to run away with the title. The Gers faced a tough Livingston side at a place where they'd drawn 0-0 at the start of the campaign. There were a few missed chances, and Steven Gerrard was sent off at half-time for remonstrating with officials after Alfredo Morelos was booked for diving when it appeared to be a clear penalty. Nevertheless, the Gers' relentless attacking paid off, with Morelos stabbing home 3 minutes from time to put the Gers 4 points away from the title.
Yep, and they got over the line at the weekend with a 3-0 win over St Mirren. Roughie, I think on the evidence of what we've witnessed and the way Rangers have played and the way that they've consistently produced the performances, some of the football has been a joy to watch. Some of the goals that they've scored have been good goals to watch as well, Roughie. I think it's more about the men who stopped the 10 rather than, for some people, the flip side of it, the team who blew the 10.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I think the record that's went out there, the Rangers stats this year, says it all for me. And I think we've said it on numerous occasions. Some of the buys that the managers brought in have been absolutely superb. And every one of them, to a man, when asked, we mentioned Kamara there, Aribo, they've all come in, Hadji. They've all come in and done a bit. It's not just been about 2 or 3 who have been winning games. They've all chipped in at some stage, and I think they've got the confidence for the European run as well. They've just taken that onto the league. And it's just an assurance that they never ever went behind at certain number of occasions. But if they did go behind, they knew they had people who could get a couple of goals or bring on some players who could get a couple of goals. And they've just been relentless, and they just deserve everything they're getting this year.
Yeah, and in the Old Firm games, Alison, they were top dogs. I think they'd given everybody a signal of what was to come from the League Cup when they lost it, despite dominating the game. But this season, there were no such mistakes in the big games.
I think the psychology changed hugely in the aftermath of that first Old Firm game. They won it in October at Celtic Park. I think it wasn't just the win, regardless of how big it was, but I think too just how meek Celtic were in that game. I don't think they mustered one single solitary shot on target. I thought they were outplayed, they looked outfought, and they looked cowed by Rangers at that point. And I think that's critical just to building momentum, building belief. And I know I appreciate what you're saying about the men who stopped the 10 and the men who blew it, but I actually think it's a combination of both. I don't think you can rely on one particular camp. I think the real answer is a combination of both of these factors. I think Celtic just seemed to drastically lose their way in a way that none of us would have envisaged this time a year ago. But I think what you would have to say is that Rangers were in a position to fully capitalise on that and take credit for it. I think if you're in Celtic's camp tonight or last night watching the celebrations, I think the real question you'd be asking yourself is, there was an opportunity at one point just to ask questions and put Rangers under pressure and see how they would cope with them breathing down their neck. And there was just never a point in the season where they were able to do that. And I think it would have been interesting to see how Rangers would have coped had there been any significant pressure on them. But it's to their credit that they managed to constantly keep themselves in front. And Celtic were never in a position where they looked as though they were capable of catching them. And again, you go back and you look at all the mistakes of the season, but I don't think there's a bigger one than Dubai. I think the aftermath of Dubai, the noise around the club, and then coming back and losing 13 members of the first team squad and then getting in and drawing that game with Hibs on the first game back. And I think that was where, the wheels were well and truly off.
As far as the managers are concerned, Tam, we said it consistently at the start of the season before a ball was kicked. In this season of all seasons, the team that are behind in the race in December, there would have been calls for the manager to be sacked. It actually started earlier in November when Neil Lennon's side were trailing. But credit to Steven Gerrard, because here's a boy who's come in. There was a key moment, I think you highlighted it on one of the programmes a few weeks ago. that at Hearts he was looking and considering his own position when Celtic went on again to win the title. But, he's stuck in there. The board have stuck by him. He's gradually brought better players in, and they've been well organised. And his backroom team as well deserve credit for that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that deserve credit, Peter. I think that the board at Rangers, obviously 2 seasons without a trophy, a lot of old firm managers wouldn't survive that. But I think the runs in Europe, I think, showed that there was improvement at Rangers, and I think that's what gave Steven Gerrard the benefit of the doubt. And when they come back, he's been flying. I think that this season, you look at the European performances as well, and I think that's been a major factor in Rangers being able to spend more money. I think that's brought money into the club. That's enabled them to go out and buy guys like Roughie and Eaton and strengthen the squad. And the guys that come in, they're 8 or 9 out of 10. They've got a great squad of players. They're hungry, they're humble, they all work hard. There's been no shouting from the rooftops, which I mentioned before. I think that's been Rangers' downfall when they've won an Old Firm game. Steven Gerrard shouting into the camera. I think last season, or the season before, when they went top of the league, there's been none of that this season, Peter. There's been nothing. There's been feet has been firmly on the ground. They've took every game as it's came, and they've ground Celtic into the ground. They've destroyed Celtic this season. So I think you've got to give a lot of people, Ross Wilson as well, for his director of football, bringing guys in. The players have brought in, I think, over the piece have been excellent. So I think there's a lot of people that need to take credit for this amongst Rangers. From the board downwards, it's been a fantastic season for them.
Yeah, that's on the field, and I don't think we've missed anybody, Roughie, have we? I mean, down to the canteen lady. I think everybody deserves credit. I think we've mentioned them all.
She served good grub.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rangers win the title. The flip side and the downside to this is, of course, the conduct of supporters over a 2-day period where they broke the lockdown rules in great numbers outside Ibrox on the Saturday and, of course, at George Square on the Sunday and elsewhere. The scenes at times, I think, annoyed a lot of people. Will there be repercussions? Only time will tell. What impact will that have on lockdown and the coronavirus? Will the government be taking action on this? Will the police be looking at retrospective action to the people who actually broke lockdown rules? And certainly the carnage in George Square afterwards, when most of the fans had departed, left a sorry state this morning, some of the pictures. So lots of questions to be asked on that. As far as Saturday's concerned, there was a large number of Rangers fans had actually gathered with the title in sight. Steven Gerrard mentioned after the game that you could understand why they wanted to be at the stadium.
Have you got any inside you or any part of your heart can understand what these fans have been through, and you can totally understand what's going on outside the stadium, but it's my job to try and control that, and obviously safety is paramount at the moment, but it is tough.
Rangers released a statement on the breaking of the rules in lockdown, and this is what it had to say. During the last number of weeks, Rangers can confirm that we initiated open dialogue with key stakeholders in relation to the possibility of us achieving a historic 55th league title. We've engaged with our local MP, the Justice Minister, the Scottish Government, Police Scotland, and the SPFL in relation to maintaining a cohesive message regarding public safety during the COVID-19 pandemic. We understand the jubilance of our support, who recognise this has been a historic year for the club. Nevertheless, it has been of great frustration for all football fans across the world that they haven't been able to watch their team in stadiums. We reiterate the message that fans should adhere to government guidelines, stay safe, socially distance, and look after each other in this difficult time. We will continue to proactively engage with key stakeholders to maintain a cohesive message in relation to government guidance. That was a statement from Rangers on this issue. Is there any cutting of any slack on this one, Roughie?
I don't think there is much slack at all, Peter. I think we all know about the pandemic. We all know the rules. And if you listen to the government statement today, it doesn't back up that statement for Rangers. The government are absolutely furious. They're saying that they told Rangers on 2 occasions to really make sure that the fans abided by you know, all the restrictions and everything, and seemingly nothing was done about it. But it's okay coming out with that statement now after the fact. But from a lot of people, I mean, understand, you know, why supporters would want to celebrate, you know, 9 years of misery and you get one league win, you know, you want to celebrate it. But with so much going on just now, I'm sure it'll offend a lot of people out there who have been sticking to the rules. And I don't know what the repercussions are. I don't know who it takes it upon themselves to do anything about it. So we'll just have to wait and see.
This is what the government official John Swinney had to say about the situation with Saturday and Sunday. I thank all those fans who celebrated at home and followed the rules. But the behaviour of some fans has been an absolute disgrace and has undoubtedly cast a shadow over what should have been a special day for the team. The success we've had in recent weeks in reducing case numbers is because so many people across Scotland have stuck to extremely tough rules which are designed to stop the spread of the virus. He goes on to say, to see so many people deliberately flouting these rules with no regard to the safety of others is shameful. Events like yesterday risk spreading the virus, and they showed no respect at all for the millions of people across Scotland who've been sticking to the rules. I think it would have been the duty of Rangers to say clearly to fans that they should have come out, and when they did, they should have gone home. And he goes on to say the silence from Rangers was deafening. That's a matter of profound regret. If the club had said to its fans to follow restrictions which are in place like every other citizen and had gone home and avoided the crowded scenes that we had outside Ibrox and in George Square, the messaging of that type from the club, I think, could have helped to diffuse the situation and crucially to disperse the crowds. But it didn't happen, and that is one of the deep elements of concern that the government has about the conduct of Rangers. So that's what John Swinney had to say on it, Tam. Whether that affects in any way the easing of or acceleration of us coming out of lockdown, only time will tell. I don't think it will. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, listen, you can't condone the scenes, Peter. You know, it's bang out order. It's a real slap in the face, I think, for frontline NHS workers and people, as John Swinney said, that are following the rules. You know, we're all following the rules. I had my 40th birthday last week. You know, and I spent it with my wife. I'd love to have the party in the house with my family. You know, but I didn't because it's against the rules. So I think that it's a disgrace, to be honest, the scenes. By all means, Rangers supporters are entitled to be absolutely thrilled that they've stopped 10 in a row. I understand that. You know, but have a drink in the house. You know, drink yourself into a coma in the house if you want. You know, just you don't need to go out. And I think that's a real disrespect for a lot of people who are following the rules, and nurses and doctors who could probably get a wee spike here. You know, in terms of the virus, and people who are desperate to get out of lockdown. You know, we're all desperate to get out of lockdown. You know, but events like that at Ibrox and George Square is going to make it. I think could make it longer that we're going to be stuck in the house. So, you know, I thought it was out of order, Peter, and you know, I think John Swinney was bang on there with his statement.
Okay, we've dealt with Rangers as far as winning the title. We've paid our tribute to it, and of course we've dealt with that issue of what happened over the last 2 days. I'm not going to read out any messages because this is not a day to read out some of the messages that come up, and I apologise to anyone who's offended by some of the messages that go up on our site. I have no control over it. We can only give you our opinion and state the facts. We paid tribute to Rangers winning the title, and of course given you our opinion on the conduct of Rangers supporters, and read out some statements from Rangers Football Club and from John Swinney as well. What repercussions for the fans who broke the law is forthcoming? Only time will tell. That's not for us to determine how the government or indeed the police implement the law. It's only for us to report what has happened over the weekend. Back to events on the field. Rangers defeated St Mirren by 3-0. That puts a wee bit of pressure on St Mirren, still desperately trying to get into the top six. Jim Goodwin says that game at the weekend is not one that will define their season.
We're not going to beat ourselves up about this afternoon's game. We're in a great position. If you'd have offered me one game to go pre-split to get top six, with all the carry-on that we've had to deal with off the field, when you look back to September and October with COVID and everything else, I think we'd have all bitten the hand off you for that. So we've got one massive game to come in a couple of weeks' time that we need to go and win. And the players are really excited about it and looking forward to it.
Well, I think if you'd said to Alison Jim Goodwin at the start of the season, listen, you'll be in the mix getting down to the last 5 or 6 games of the season, you'd have bitten your hand off.
We spoke about it before, haven't we? Like when we all heard Tony Fitzpatrick predicting that they had a squad capable of going and finishing in the top 6, we raised our eyebrows and thought it was maybe just putting too much pressure on Jim Goodwin and too much pressure on the squad. But they certainly look capable now. And the fact it's within touching distance, I think if they don't get it, it'll feel like a huge disappointment just because they've had this surge towards it in recent weeks.
Yep. So are they going to make it into the top 6 and stay there? Well, only time will tell. They're at the moment, and it's close between themselves and St Johnstone. Now, what about up at Tannadice? This is where, in the end, a 0-0 draw made Rangers the champions because Celtic could no longer catch them. 0-0, 26 shots in total from Celtic, not one goal at the end of it, Roughie. They've got no excuses.
No, they haven't got any excuses at all. There was no cutting edge. It's okay as a manager, you would say, well, 26 shots a goal meant that we played particularly well, but you've got to hit the back of the net. And unfortunately, that didn't happen for them. But it just sums up the season. You know, there's been many games like that where they should have won but didn't, particularly at home. You know, and that has been the downfall. You know, not winning games as comfortable as what they used to do. And that's because, for me, it's the players. I thought the players haven't performed. The Griffiths, the Kamalas, you know, they just haven't done it at all. And it's amazing that getting a clean sheet is the downfall when it's something they couldn't do all the way through the season.
Yeah, as far as looking back over it, I mean, we've discussed ad nauseum on this programme, Alison, that it's not just about the players who failed. There are a number of issues that eventually brought this whole quest for 10 in a row crashing down.
Listen, I think the problems are multitude. I think we know that. I think it's clear now to see that it needs a rebuilding process now. I think the infrastructure around the club, around the playing staff, the recruitment side of things, I think everything needs to go from scratch again. There's obviously an incoming new chief executive, but I think there will be a number of key personnel having to get to know one another this summer, and I think in some ways it would benefit the club if you start that process as quickly as possible. I'm not sure if you would want to bring in your director of football first before you decide who your manager is, but I think what you do want to do is start your preparatory work as quickly as possible, because I think it is quite a significant rebuilding process that lies ahead, and I do think there will be a number of personnel on the pitch who move on and go elsewhere next season. So you would want to be looking at identifying who you want to come in and just start that quickly, because as you know, it's a very short pre-season. You're going to have a European Championships, and then Celtic and Rangers will come off that and go straight into European qualifiers very early in July. There's not a huge amount of time for anyone to come in and start to overhaul the squad and make assessments of the squad and decide which way they want to play and who fits where.
Well, as you've suggested, big changes. The caretaker manager, John Kennedy, says no.
I think there's always panic in these moments in terms of very emotional time, especially with the city of Glasgow, because it's always Celtic and Rangers, and when one wins and the other doesn't, one side always has a bit of a kind of setback, and they get so concerned by it. Yep, there's been concerns this year which we've got to address, but massive overhauls don't often work, so we've got to be stable in terms of behind the scenes, know what we need to fix and make sure we fix it.
Yeah, do you expect more communication from Celtic on this whole situation? Do you anticipate it coming out, Tam, in the next few weeks? Because you're getting to that critical stage where the month of April is suddenly where people have to contemplate season tickets.
Yeah, Peter, I do. I think the Celtic supporters deserve something. What route Celtic are going to go down, in terms of a manager or a director of football. It's just, I just think it's unacceptable just to plod away at the end of the season the way it's going now. The Celtic fans have obviously been hurt by losing the league this season, so they'll be wanting some optimism for next year. They'll be wanting a big name, they'll be wanting a good calibre manager to come in to try and challenge Steven Gerrard, because Rangers are an excellent team, they're an excellent management, and they're very, very stable. They know how they're playing, so they're going to be hard to topple next season for Celtic. So they've got to do their business early, they've got to get their manager in early. As Alison said, it's a quick turnaround, so you've got to get your players in the door that you're wanting. And there's a lot of players at Celtic out of contract. A lot of players I think who want away. Edouard for one. So you've got to look and you've got to have conversations with these people now and say, listen, do you want to be part of Celtic next season? If not, then you make arrangements to try and get rid of them and look at replacements. So I think that the Celtic supporters deserve some communication from the club in the next 2 to 3 weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, I must just one little thing that made me laugh, Tam, and I don't know if you spotted it early, but when I was watching the game and I was sitting in the couch and I started watching the game and I could hear a plane and I thought, Dundee Airport. It's not often a plane flying over Tannadice. But as soon as I started to hear it regularly, I thought, surely Sky Sports are going to give us a shot of what's on the banner. I mean, now that's what you call a good noise up. That's the good banter that goes on.
Aye. I thought it was funny, Peter. I did. Honestly, Celtic supporters are raging, but listen, the Rangers supporters have took it tight off of Celtic. They've ripped the piss out of them for 9 years, let's be honest. So they're entitled to give it back in big licks. So I've no problem with that. You know, the aeroplane flying over. I think Celtic supporters have done it as well to Rangers and, you know, Hearts supporters. Different teams do it. They buy the banner and they buy the rent of the plane. So I thought it was funny, and the Rangers fans would have lapped that up as well, and they went on to win the league. So it was a perfect day for Rangers.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as Dundee United are concerned, they were maybe hoping to sneak into the top six, which would have been a good achievement for a team coming up from the Championship. It wasn't to be. Here's Mickey Mellon.
Of course, we understood that the second 18-yard box we had to be very good in. We had to be aggressive. We had to make sure that we limited Celtic to anything. But they were relentless. They kept getting to the ball all through the game. Yeah, my keeper had to make some saves, but that's what he's there for. So they weren't good enough to beat him. My keeper was good enough to deal with that. And to stand here and say that we're disappointed that we don't get the victory is a big step forward for Dundee United.
Yeah, do you think Dundee United fans will be hacked off, Alison, because of what's gone before? Sometimes fans have the expectations of what they've achieved prior to it, but this is a team just coming up from the Championship.
And I appreciate what you're saying, but I think it's just been a very inconsistent season for them, and I think they've got a decent budget there to work with. I think aiming for a top six place should be within Dundee United's reach. So yeah, I would appreciate if there are an element of the Tannadice support who are frustrated by the season and just how up and down it's been. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, from Dundee United and Celtic, we've obviously discussed both halves of the Old Firm. Tam, what about your team? This collapse is unbelievable. Liam Craig's goal was a peach of a goal for St Johnstone.
Yeah, it was, Peter. I'm getting worried now. I thought Hibs had third place wrapped up, to be honest, and 2 defeats in the last 2 games and no scored a goal. So listen, it's very, very jittery times. I thought it was nothing in the game. The first half, it was a poor game. You know, one wee bit of class for Liam Craig. Great finish into the far corner. And then St Johnstone, as we know, they're very, very hard to break down. They defend brilliantly from the front. The 3 strikers, you know, worked their backsides off to shut Hibs down, and they all funneled up behind them. And it was a very, very hard working St Johnstone performance. Hibs had the majority of the play the second half. You know, balls flashed across the goal. You know, goal mouth scrambles, but never really created any clear cut chances. So, you know, I think you've got to credit St Johnstone by the way they played, the way they defended, and to get the 3 points. But Hibs have now got a huge game coming up. Their game in hand against Ross County on Saturday. You know, the gap is now 3 points. And listen, I think Hibs need to win that game to get that 6-point cushion, you know. And Aberdeen have scored 1 goal in 9 games, and they're still in the shake-up for third. So I think it shows you how inconsistent a lot of the teams have been, Peter. It's there's been no consistency whatsoever. So Hibs need to go to Ross County and win, or else I'll tell you what, it'll be squeaky bum time at Dunleithway.
Yeah, Roughie, you still fancy the High Bees though. 3 points in a game in hand.
Well, you look at Ross County's performance at the weekend. John Hughes looks as if he's getting a reaction for the players. You know, they all seem to be working for each other. It took me by surprise that 3-1, 3-2 at the weekend there. So no, he'll be looking to take points, and I think any points that you take at this moment in time is a bonus, because I think when it comes to the split, you know, I think they're all equally good enough to beat each other. So if you can go on some kind of wee run, and when I mean a run, I mean win 2 games in a row, you know, that's always a bonus. So a difficult one is Tam was saying there, it's Hibs that have got to be a reaction for Hibs, because they've had a reasonable season. It's just in the last month or two they've just been not as good as what they were early on.
Yeah, that's the headline then. Roughie in Ross County compliment shock. I can see you through gritted teeth there. I thought he's going to give them the full compliment.
He's still going to tip Hibs into the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely is. He's a stonewall certainty. Of course, over and above that, you mentioned there, Alison, Aberdeen, they're still in the mix. 0-0 against Hamilton. See if you were a Dons fan right now. I think if you were inside the stadium, I think, Derek McInnes would be under severe pressure. They would not be happy with a 0-0 against Hamilton.
I think they'd be tearing their hair out. I think if you were in the stadium and watching that, I think it would just be an infuriating run that they're on. Especially, I think, when you look at Hamilton, and I know obviously Bruce Anderson wasn't eligible to play against his parent club at the weekend, but when you look at how well he's played since going there in January, and you think, it might have been worth a shot, just maybe experimenting with some of the younger players who are at the club. But I just think the run that they've been on has been wretched in terms of scoring goals, and it just looks so stagnant. There's no creativity, there's no spark of life. And I think what just to touch on what Tam said, though, I think it's reflective of the inconsistency of so many teams this season, that they are still in the mix for third, despite everything that they've endured, particularly since the turn of the year.
Yeah, and of course the game that has got me really thinking about it, Hamilton have been battling away over the last month to 6 weeks. Suddenly Kelly look in trouble. I thought Kyle Lafferty, scored a good couple of goals, but still not enough against Ross County. Tam, they got the 3-2 win. I've got a feeling Hamilton could escape again, and I think Kilmarnock are in trouble.
Kilmarnock, about 3 or 4 weeks ago were 91 to get relegated. I think I recommended it to a couple of my pals on the WhatsApp. I think they've had a couple of quid on. So, listen, I think that Kilmarnock are in major trouble. I think the only person that can, the two people that can save them is the manager and Kyle Lafferty. I think Lafferty is he looks hungry. He's got a short-term deal. Listen, I've been in that situation myself. When you go to a club and they're struggling, you've got a wee window there to do well, and you've got a wee 4 or 5 month contract. You're busting your gut to try and get a longer deal. So I think that's what Kyle Lafferty will do. I think it was a masterstroke bringing them in. And I think the more he plays, the more goals he'll score. He was unlucky the previous week not to score a couple, so he's been a great signing. And I think he's a man that can keep Kilmarnock up, because I don't see an awful lot outside of that. Defended dreadfully at the weekend. Balls over the top, couldn't deal with them for Ross County. And, Tommy Wright's teams don't usually give much away. Kilmarnock don't usually give much away, so to lose 3 goals was a dreadful day for them. But I think they're in big trouble, as you said. I think Hamilton, they don't go away. They do it every season, and I think they might do it this season as well. But I think Kilmarnock are in big trouble. They're heavily reliant on Kyle Lafferty now to produce magic.
Yeah, I don't think Motherwell are in any trouble, to be perfectly honest with you. But it just shows you, Roughie, if you win a Manager of the Month, it's the kiss of death, isn't it? Because suddenly, in the last 5 games, Livingston can't buy a win.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? For the turnaround when Gary Holt left and that run they went on, you could see the confidence within the players. But we've said this numerous occasions as well. It's okay when you're on a winning run and you keep winning, but when you're in a losing run, you just keep losing. And that's the way it is. The confidence is gone. I think the getting beaten in the cup wouldn't have helped anything. I know people are saying, "Oh, you've got to pick yourself up." Takes yourself a wee while to get over that. You're getting to a cup final and not winning it. So no, they need to dig in. They need to get a result as well. But so do all the teams down there, the ones we're talking about, Kilmarnock. Hamilton still need a win as well. Points are okay at this stage, but when it comes to the split, if you don't win games, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and just looking at the Scottish Premiership table, I think for Rangers fans, that gap is great viewing. They can't be caught by Celtic. They are the champions at the top of the table, and at the bottom end, well, there's 3 teams that I think we're looking at and saying that's the battle now: Ross County, Kilmarnock, and Hamilton. I don't think Motherwell will be in about it. I think they're possibly looking up the way. Graham Alexander certainly has steadied the ship there and the camp. Now, as far as the team of the week's concerned, we've all had a right good laugh sometimes if there's a player that's not in it, if there's somebody that's been forgotten. So, on this weekend of all weekends, here's Gabriel Antoniazzi's team of the week.
Alan Mcgregor has conceded only 7 goals all campaign, and he's the rock on which this team is built upon. Nathan Patterson has impressed since his return to the side, and he could make a late push for the Euros. Connor Goldson is the leader at the back and helps going forward too. He assisted the opener. Philip Hilander helped keep a clean sheet, and his reading of the game always shines through. Borna Barisic has been the league's best left back for a couple of years, and he dominated the flank again. Glenn Kamara slipped a lovely ball through to Morelos for the second goal in as many minutes. Stephen Davis is the composer of this orchestra, and he kept the ball ticking over all game. Joe Aribo's been outstanding since the turn of the year, and he thrives when playing centrally. Yanis Hadji's tidy footwork always makes a difference. He slammed in the third with his allegedly weaker left foot. Alfredo Morelos is back to his best, and his finish was sensational. Ryan Kent was man of the match with an assist and a thunderous strike from outside the box.
Any player you disagree with?
Somebody's late for a gig on Rangers TV. How staunch is that? Unbelievable.
Ali, is there any player you don't think should be there?
Listen, I think you would have to commend Rangers on a fabulous season. They've been extraordinarily consistent. I think their players will make up the bulk of the individual honours when we get to the end of the season. I think that's reflective of the dominance that they've enjoyed throughout the entirety of the campaign. But come on, Gabriel, there are other teams playing this weekend as well.
Roughie, when I had a chat with him this morning, I thought, 1-11 Rangers. How's that going to go down? How's that going to go down in the show? But nevertheless, I think he's got. I can understand when we were chatting about it. I can absolutely get it. You know that when you look over the course of the season and the way, you know, the win over St Mirren's one thing. It was just the way they went about their business. There was good goals scored, and it was reflective of the way they've played the entire season. So why not?
Yeah, I think if that lineup had been the end of the season team, you know, he might not have been too far away. You know, there's no doubt about that. But I think he's just stretching a wee bit for the weekend there. I thought the Dundee United goalkeeper again was absolutely superb. But no, I mean that. You could see why he's picked a lot of the players, and you can see why he's picked that team in the light of what's happened at the weekend. And it's just everything's blue for Rangers just now.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, isn't it amazing, Alison, that Roughie's consistently in the goalkeepers union? Because, dare I say it, and I've seen you play sport, Alison, and I know you're a keen sports person. You're out running and everything. Of the 27 shots that Siegrist had to save from Celtic, I reckon you would have saved 26 of them and maybe tipped the 27th round the post. Am I being fair?
I would agree. I'd agree with you. I'm not sure they really. I'm not sure there was anything there. I'm not sure there was anything that you wouldn't have expected them or anticipated them to save. I'd agree. Celtic had so much dominance in that first half and just couldn't turn it into a goal. But I think what you are seeing too is players that just look as though their hearts and their heads are elsewhere at Celtic just now.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, Gabriel obviously has picked the entire Rangers team for Team of the Week, and I'm sure Rangers fans will enjoy the 1-11. But here's the big question now after it, and I've tried to read as many sensible posts as possible, and people who are talking and people who are writing about the title. Is it the start of a dominating era for Rangers in your mind, Roughie? Or do you anticipate next year a totally different Celtic? It's difficult to talk about it in the sense that they don't know who the manager is, but do you feel as if the way Rangers are at the moment, that this could be the start of a dominating era?
I think that's up to Celtic. I think that's up to what Celtic do. We've already discussed it, you know. Who's the manager, who's going to be the director of football, what players are still going to be there. I think the good thing for Celtic is, as Neil Lennon identified, there's 4 or 5 players don't want to be there. So that's an easy one. Just identify them there and get them out the door. But I think it depends on the calibre of player that comes in. What is it still bringing in young, untried players and selling them on? Is it bringing in experienced players? Is it bringing in real quality? Is it spending money? You know, we'll get an indication of when the manager comes in, what kind of player he's going to identify. I always think that depending on what manager you bring in and where he's come from, what kind of team he's been managing, where he's been managing, that gives you an idea of the quality that he can identify. So I think the Celtic supporters will be just waiting to see who that is. But it's certainly 8 or 9 players for me. You know, it definitely is. It's a massive rebuild. And Celtic don't tend to act very quickly on signings and bringing people in. So they'll have to do it this time. You know, no hanging about. It has to be done because Rangers are solid. If you look at the successor Rangers, you know, compared to Celtic, a goalkeeper that's played week in, week out, Mcgregor, a back four that's the back four every week, a midfield that gets tinkered with a wee bit, and a forward line that's solid, you know. So they've got a solid team and players coming in. Celtic just don't have any of that. I've already said I think the only successes this year have been Mcgregor and Turnbull and Christie. I really can't give anybody else any pass marks.
Yeah, although they might change the way they go about their business, Tam, with the departure of Peter Lawwell. I have my doubts, but with him stepping down, you know, whether he steps away from the club, I also have my doubts. But nevertheless, they might change the way they go about their business. But the one thing I believe is certain, Tam, because of the nature of the two of them and their ability to strengthen because of the huge support they have, I don't see it being a situation of, you know, an era of dominance by one club or the other now, because I think both of them now have the capacity to earn real money again. And Rangers will be in a far better place financially this coming season, you know, with Champions League football and the money that will bring as well. The merchandise will go through the roof.
Yeah, I've got to kind of disagree with Roughie a little bit in terms of Rangers' dominance. You know, Rangers say that it's all about what Celtic do. I think it's to do what Rangers do. I think that if Rangers, you know, if they're humble, you know, and they keep working hard, they keep doing what they've been doing, you know, and their players don't get egos. You know, it's easy. They've got a bit of success. They've won the league. You know, the players get egos. I look at Liverpool down the road. I think that's a great example of a team who's had success and who now are plummeting down the table. I think there's too many players in there who think they're superstars. So I think in terms of Rangers, if they can stay humble, if they can keep improving, keep working hard, you know, and keep the manager, then I think they could be very, very difficult to topple next season because they've got continuity in there. They've been building for 3 years. And as John Kennedy says, I can agree with him a little bit. It's not easy just to bring 8 or 9 players in and just gel them straight away and then go and challenge. You know, it takes time for people to settle in. So I think it's about what Rangers do in the summer. If they keep all their best players, I think Morelos will go. But if they can keep, you know, your Aribos and your Hagis, you know, and guys like that, Ryan Jack, Tavernier, if they can keep all these top players and they're humble and they're ready and they're hungry to go again next season, I think it'll be very difficult for Celtic to peg them back.
And I anticipate, Ali, despite all the wild speculation, I anticipate Steven Gerrard there for a real tilted. He'll have the bit between his teeth. He's got a good backroom team. Gary McAllister is a top boy. Great lad as well. They'll be wanting a tilt at the Champions League. He'll be wanting to build that side and take it on again, despite some people suggesting Liverpool. I think it's way too early for him for the Liverpool job. And Klopp, for me, has just had a blip in the season.
I think it's too early too, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think there'll definitely be some enticement there with the possibility of going into the Champions League, but I think their European progress and their European results is what will have been noted south of the border. I think I don't know how much kudos anyone gets for winning a Scottish title, let's be honest, down south, but what really makes people sit up and notice is when you're getting results in European football, and I think some of these results there have been outstanding. So what you might find is that it is too early for Liverpool, but it doesn't definitely rule out the fact that there may be offers coming in for him from elsewhere. Whether or not they would be sufficient for him to think that he would leave where he is another matter, but I certainly think he'll be on the radar of a few clubs this summer.
Yeah, I think any talk of Klopp leaving Liverpool is just a complete load of nonsense. Although, dare I suggest to you, Roughie, if Steven Gerrard wins the Europa... Well, I was going to say, I know, but I mean, there are mitigating circumstances. Cut the guy some slack, but I understand where you're coming from, Tam. But Roughie, for God's sake, if Rangers were to go on and win the Europa League, Gerrard could be the next Real Madrid manager.
Yeah, that's the stock. You know, that's these. I mean, I think you're just taking that just a wee bit too far, by the way. But certainly the top teams, that's what they identify the success of a manager. If you win a European trophy, whether it's the Champions League or Europa, that's the mark that you've done something, and that's the mark that gets you into a big club. But at this moment in time, in England-wise, the top four or the top five, you know, aren't really looking for a new manager. I mean, you look at Spurs, but I read somebody saying something. I mean, I know where Alison's coming from. That down in England, they don't, you know, treat in we do up here at all. So he might have to go to an English club. He might have to go and prove himself down in England, you know, to get the big one at Liverpool. But as everybody says, he'll end up at Liverpool sometime. I'm just hoping that the Rangers supporters will be hoping it's not soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a stonewall certainty. Well, what about the predictor? It's getting really, really tight now, I have to say, because I going into Sunday, I had 7 points and you two had 4 points. So I thought, well, good, I'm pegging you back. I think you picked up another 2, Tam, from the Dundee United prediction. So there it is, 4 points the difference, Tam, and Roughie just 10 points behind me. So it's looking good, isn't it, Tam?
I've lost my scores. What's the scores? I've lost my scores. What is it?
That's every week.
What is it?
What? Yeah, you're 256. I'm 266, and Tam's 270. So it's mightily close, Roughie.
Yeah. Tam, I mean, I don't know. He's embarrassed taking 2 points for that Celtic game. He went 2 each, and it's nothing each. And he gets 2 points.
I know.
I did say Rangers would win, and Celtic would draw, and Rangers would win the league. That was my prediction on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just before we go into the couple of things I want to pick out on the English football, and we touched on Liverpool, of course. But what I was going to say, it's International Women's Day, Alison, and I think. Due to the fact I've got 7 sisters, I thought I'd better mention it in case I get absolutely leathered. International Women's Day. For me, when I was looking at all the people who are mentioning it, I think we've got a bit to go for the women's game to get to the point where maybe tennis, where they're looking at the equality. I don't know how. I don't know if you could put a figure of a year of how long it's going to take, Alison.
There's no one that could tell you that just now, but what you can say with some conviction is that it's got a huge way to go, and the easiest way to point to that is just the last few months where the women's game was suspended indefinitely and it didn't have the same elite sportsman category that was given to the men's game. I think that was a source of very, very genuine frustration for many of the players who couldn't get out and train, and it was just so bizarre then when you have an international call-up in the middle of it and you have players going to play for their country for European qualifiers and games that could have carried significant weight having not played any club football. So I think that would be your very obvious one, but I think you'd have to be honest and say too that when you look at the money within the Scottish game and you look at some of the top flight clubs who really struggle to attract fans into grounds and struggle for sponsorship and just for financial, all the financial things that go to the successful running of a club, how tough it is. I think you can see just how much of a challenge it will be to get the women's game up to par. I think a massive step in the right direction came from Celtic and Rangers both going professional and offering professional contracts, but I still think there's a huge amount to be done, even just in terms of publicising stories and making it as part of your sports pages as anything else, that you have a category that's set aside for women's football, that you make stories knowing that it's publicised in a way that might make it an attractive proposition for people to go along and see games and support it. Some of the stories that you hear from women's footballers and what they sacrificed even in very recent times to play for their countries and to play football at all while holding down full-time jobs and sometimes quite physically demanding full-time jobs, and then dedicating an hour's driving to get to training, an hour's driving to go home, and getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym before going to jobs. I think their dedication is without question.
Yep, and in the 9 years of this show, Roughie, we've given it more than enough coverage and will continue to do so. In fact, every time we get someone on the programme, usually are stolen by other organisations, Roughie. Only wish with their budget and we'd be able to employ many, many more.
Yeah, I'd listened to a piece from Leanne this morning and she was very positive in where she came from and who gave her that leg up to get where she was. And yeah, I mean, it's not the first time we've had women on the show who have been promoted. So just hang in, Alison. We'll get you there.
Yeah.
I can't make me a lost cause.
No, you're not a lost cause, by the way. But another thing about it is just don't. None of that badge kissing, Ali, and you'll be absolutely fine. That's the rule, you know. It's as simple as that. Just one little point that I want to highlight that maybe has gone unnoticed, and it's really for people of my age and Roughies. I don't know if you two will remember him with any great certainty, but I just want to give a mention to Alistair Alexander. He's a BBC commentator who sadly passed away at the weekend. I had the good fortune to chat to Alistair on more than a few occasions across European trips and at Scottish grounds. He was, like Archie, I think, the voice of Scottish football commentary, certainly in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up as a boy. And I think it's a great loss to our profession, Roughie.
Yeah, I've bumped into him on numerous occasions. You're right, you know, old school, you know, that and very respected and everything that he did. You know, if you hear like players of after me talking about him, he was one of these guys you would talk to, have an interview with, and he was just fantastic on air. And these guys way back then were legends.
Yeah, absolutely. And our thoughts, condolences, and of course our prayers go to Alistair Alexander's friends and family at this very sad time. Down south, you mentioned there, Tam, Liverpool lost again to Fulham. And I did actually force myself to watch the Manchester derby, and United were a wee bit better than they normally are.
Yeah, good game. Good game. Man United obviously get the early goal and the early goal in the second half and see the game out very, very well. I still think obviously Man City have won the league, but it just puts a little bit of seed of doubt in their mind that they've lost the game now. And great result for Man United, who have been an absolute bore fest to watch in the big games this season, to be honest. At least there was a couple of goals to watch. But going back to Liverpool, you know, they are struggling. I think they're 8th in the league now. I think that's the first time they've lost 6 consecutive games at Anfield. You know, when you're talking about Klopp, and you know, keep losing games, Peter. He's going to be under pressure. You know, I know he's missing a couple of players. He's missing Van Dijk, but you can't. I mean, if Liverpool finish outside the top 10, you know, he's going to be under pressure. I don't think Peter. I don't think everything's all well behind the scenes in there. I think there's people maybe causing aggro, whether it's Mane or Salah. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be something right, Peter, for me.
Yeah, you can't sack him. I just think it would be an act of absolute lunacy if that were to happen this season. Give him the grace. He's lost his, I think he lost his dad, and not to go over there and see that, the bereavement, some other things. We've all talked about the defence that has been chopped and changed, and he hasn't had that midfield that he's looking for. Listen, I'm sure once they get to the end of the season, they're still in the Champions League, who knows? But if they sack him, then the balls burst, as one of my old mates used to say to me. The game's up the lum. Anyway, apart from anything else, thoroughly enjoyed today's programme. There's been lots of opinion as ever. Thank you to the countless people who have followed us. Don't forget you can follow the programme by hitting the follow button on Facebook. You can share the stream. And if you're on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button as well. We'd love you to do that. The ever-growing football family watching the programme. Roughie and I, 9 years ago, never thought we'd be still battering it about. So we're really absolutely delighted for your support. You'll get an opinion, get a bit of banter as well. And as ever, every day of the week, we'll always talk about the burning issues. All that remains for me to say is congratulations indeed to Steven Gerrard and Rangers. They've won the title, and deservedly so. Worthy winners, securing it with that 3-0 win over St Mirren. The Rangers fans have waited a long time, and quite a few of them. I can't quite put a my finger on it, but quite a few of them managed to get through to me in a WhatsApp group and text me as well. Most of my mates giving me absolute pelters, I have to say, Tam, and wondering if my wife is safe. But she's still in the cupboard, Roughie, and I'm just passing food through, and she's not getting out until she stops singing. It's as simple as that, Roughie. Is that fair?
I hope you've taken the rocket. Have you taken the rocket sofa? You're taking the fireworks sofa, right?
There's just fireworks. I'm sure she's hired a plane. It's just circling the house as we speak. It's been absolutely incredible. A plane, the fireworks, and of course, she keeps singing "Mental as Anything." I'm not quite sure what that song means, but nevertheless, congratulations to Rangers from Tam, Alison, Roughie, and myself, Peter Martin. Thanks for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit